It was a cold, lonely night when Daniel's car broke down on the desolate highway that cut through the outskirts of Oregon. The rain poured relentlessly, blurring his windshield as he tried to find any sign of civilization. His phone battery was dead, and the nearest gas station was miles away. Just when he thought he'd have to sleep in the car, he noticed a dimly lit sign flickering in the distance. The Whispering Motel. Relieved, Daniel pulled into the cracked parking lot. The motel looked ancient, its walls stained by years of neglect. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a sickly green glow over the entrance. Inside, the air was heavy with mildew. Behind the counter sat an old woman with pale eyes and a voice that cracked like broken glass. "Room 7, she rasped, sliding a rusted key across the counter. "Don't listen to the whispers." Daniel frowned, thinking it was just a weird attempt at humor. But by the time he got to his room, he realized something was wrong. The hallway was long and dim, lined with faded floral wallpaper that peeled away in strips. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the hum of the overhead lights. Inside room 7, the decor was straight out of the 1970s. Dusty curtains, a stained carpet, and a single bed that creaked under the weight of the years. Daniel collapsed onto it, exhausted. He switched off the light, letting the sound of the rain lull him to sleep. But then around midnight, he woke to a whisper. It wasn't clear at first. Soft, muffled, like someone speaking through the wall. He sat up, heart pounding. "Hello?" he called out, but there was no answer. Just that whispering, continuous, urgent, as if a dozen voices were murmuring at once. He pressed his ear against the wall. The voices grew louder, hissing words he couldn't understand. They seemed to be coming from the next room. When he stepped into the hallway, he noticed something horrifying. All the room doors were slightly open, swaying gently as if moved by invisible hands. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. He peeked into room 6, empty. The bed was neatly made, untouched for years. Room 8, same. Dust thick enough to write his name in. But when he turned around, he saw room 7's door slowly closing behind him. Panic surged. He rushed back, grabbed the doorknob, freezing cold, and shoved it open. The lights flickered violently. The whispers stopped. For a few seconds, there was nothing but silence. Then he noticed something written on the mirror. Words appearing slowly, as if an unseen finger traced them from inside the glass. "You shouldn't have left your room." The lights went out. The whispering returned, louder this time, surrounding him, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Daniel screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. When morning came, room 7 was empty again. Only the key remained, resting on the counter, cold, rusted, and waiting for the next traveler. In the small coastal town of Greystone Bay, an old lighthouse stood perched on the cliffs, overlooking the endless gray ocean. Locals called it Hollow Light, a name that came from its eerie reputation. The light had been out for nearly 20 years. Ever since the last keeper vanished without a trace, no one dared go near it after sunset, except for Eli Turner, a young photographer who had an unhealthy fascination with abandoned places. Eli arrived just before dusk, his camera hanging from his neck, sea wind whipping against his coat. The path to the lighthouse was steep and covered in slick moss. The waves below crashed violently against the rocks, echoing like thunder. As he reached the iron gate, he noticed something odd. It was already open. Inside, the structure groaned under the pressure of time. Rusted staircases spiraled upward, and the smell of salt and decay filled the air. Eli's flashlight flickered as he made his way to the top. On the walls, strange markings had been etched into the concrete. Circles, names, and phrases written in what looked like dried blood. He stopped when he heard a faint tapping sound above him. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like footsteps pacing in the lantern room. "Hello," he called out. No response. He climbed faster, his heart racing, camera trembling in his hands. At the top, the lantern room was cold and silent. The glass was cracked, and the great light mechanism stood in ruins. But the tapping continued, behind him. He turned around and saw a figure standing by the railing. It was a man in a tattered keeper's uniform, his back turned to Eli. His skin looked gray, his posture stiff, as though frozen in time. "Sir?" Eli whispered, raising his flashlight. The figure didn't move. Then slowly, its head turned. Too far, twisting almost completely around. Eli stumbled back, dropping his flashlight. The room plunged into darkness, except for the pale glow of the moon seeping through the glass. The man's eyes reflected it, milky white and lifeless. "Why did you come here?" the voice asked, deep and distorted, echoing from all around. Eli froze. The keeper took a step forward, boots scraping against the floor. "The light must never go out. Never again." Eli backed toward the stairs, fumbling for his camera. He snapped a picture. The flash illuminated the entire room for a split second, revealing hundreds of shadowy faces pressed against the glass from outside, staring in. When the light faded, they were gone. He ran down the stairs, breath ragged, heart pounding. But the lighthouse had changed. The exit was gone. The staircase looped endlessly, leading him back to the same room again and again. Finally, he collapsed near the lantern, whispering prayers under his breath. The light mechanism suddenly creaked to life, glowing faintly red. Eli turned toward it, and in the reflection of the lens, he saw the keeper standing right behind him, smiling. The next morning, fishermen at Greystone Bay reported seeing the lighthouse's light shining for the first time in decades. But when authorities checked the building, they found no one inside. Only Eli's camera, still recording. The last image on the footage? A man in a keeper's uniform, smiling directly into the lens. When Clara moved to the city for college, she was thrilled to finally live on her own. Rent was high, so when she found a cheap 2-bedroom apartment through an online ad, it felt like a dream come true. Her roommate, Lena, had already been living there for a few months. Over text, Lena seemed polite, quiet, reserved, maybe a little shy. When Clara arrived with her boxes, Lena wasn't home. The apartment was small but cozy, with vintage furniture and thick curtains that blocked most of the sunlight. Clara unpacked, set up her room, and noticed the second bedroom door was slightly open. She peeked inside and saw that it was dark except for a single photograph hanging on the wall. An old faded picture of 2 girls standing beside a tree. Later that evening, she finally met Lena. She was pale, soft-spoken, and avoided eye contact. "Sorry about the mess," Lena murmured, though the apartment was spotless. "I like things quiet here." The next few days were normal, at least at first. Clara went to her classes, came home late, and sometimes heard Lena humming softly in the kitchen at night. But something about her seemed off. She never ate. She never went outside. And whenever Clara asked simple questions, like where she was from, Lena would smile and say, "You'll find out soon enough." One night, Clara woke up to the sound of whispering. At first, she thought it was the neighbors, but when she pressed her ear to the wall, the voices were coming from Lena's room. Low, frantic whispers that didn't sound like one person. It was like a dozen voices overlapping, repeating her name. "Clara! Clara! Clara!" She froze. Her heart raced as she slowly got out of bed. The apartment was dark, the only light coming from the crack under Lena's door. It flickered, as if from candles. Clara stepped closer, every instinct screaming for her to turn back. When she peeked through the gap, she saw Lena kneeling in the center of her room, surrounded by dozens of photographs. The same 2 girls by the tree, over and over again. Some photos had their faces scratched out, while others had strange symbols drawn over them. The whispers grew louder until they seemed to echo inside Clara's head. Then Lena turned her head slowly, her eyes completely black. "You shouldn't be here," she said in a voice that wasn't hers. It was layered, distorted, as if multiple people spoke at once. Clara stumbled backward and ran to the door, but it wouldn't open. She screamed, clawing at the handle, when suddenly the whispering stopped. Silence filled the apartment. When she turned back, Lena was gone. The next morning, Clara called the landlord to demand answers. The old woman on the phone sighed. "Honey, that apartment's been empty for years. The last tenant, Lena, died there. Roommate disappeared the same week Clara's stomach dropped." She looked toward the second bedroom. The door was now closed, and from inside faint humming could be heard. The same gentle voice whispered, "Welcome home, Clara.